Hey, Shane,
Yeah, Spence?
have you seen The Fast and the Furious?
Nope.
Have you seen Too Fast, Too Furious?
No.
Have you seen The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift?
Also, no.
Have you seen Fast and Furious?
This might surprise you, but I haven't seen that.
Well... You have now.
Yes, I have now seen all four of those movies.
I should add, in 2 days, we binged them.
In 2 days.
Which
literally.
is the optimal way to watch the Fast and Furious franchise.
Is it?
You know what? As the residential expert on the Fast and Furious movie, the Fast and Furious saga,
The saga.
excuse
the
me.
saga. You can't
it
call
is.
it the series. It's the saga.
As a mega fan, it is. It's the best way to get into these.
Give me a ranking. Which saga is better? The Twilight Saga
Okay,
or
see,
the
now
Fast Saga?
Now you're playing on my heartstrings, and I don't
Yeah, baby.
appreciate that. Look, one of them has Batman in them.
Yes.
And that's kind of a deal breaker for me.
This is true.
No, but this has been a weird thing in our friendship and like a decades long thing
Right.
of me raving about how much I love these movies and then
Right.
us continuing to not watch them.
Well, it was like I was holding on, waiting for us to watch it together, and then somebody decided to go to college and go to a different state and become a big smart college boy. And
B, dog. That's
and so then we lost like 5 or 6 years, however many it was, of opportunity to watch it together. So I think you need to, instead of pointing that finger at me, look real hard in the mirror and see whose fault it truly was.
Booger the dogs.
It was
Booger's
Boogers. It was
fault.
Boogers. We can agree on that.
No, okay. So before we dive into like talking about them in general,
Yeah.
what was your perception going in? Were you excited going in, or were you more like, great, this is like, I'm not going to like these?
Okay, I'll give you the full history, my full history with Fast and Furious Saga. I was generally aware of their existence from the time they started to become like kind of more and more popular. I mean, like the first two weren't like the biggest, most popular movies of all time, but then like Tokyo Drift and Fast and Furious and Fast 5 and all these, like they kind of gained popularity and earned more and more money each time. And so then they become, there's this like groundswell of support for them. And like, I always thought they were the dumb car movies, and spoiler alert, they are. But in the best, in the
poor man's Christopher Nolan films, as I call them.
I was generally aware of them. I have seen bits and pieces of a few of them. Specifically, I have seen I had seen a sizable chunk of Tokyo Drift. It was on TBS every other weekend for at least a couple years, and I caught the middle section where he's learning how to drift. Spoiler alert. We'll get to that, and then. I had also seen the
No, say it.
the Dom's force vision of Letty's car accident in Fast and Furious, or Forced and Furious as I like to call it. So yeah. I had seen a little bit. I knew they were dumb, but I knew a lot of people like really liked them. And I had seen, like, obviously you had told me about how like actually kind of good they are. They're like really sincere and really fun. And then I also had seen Patrick H. Willems, Patrick
Explains.
Patrick Explains why Fast and
great
Furious
video.
is great. Yeah, that one. I had watched that, and so I knew that they were just big and dumb and sincere and like wore their heart on the sleeves. And so like as time went on, I got more and more kind of like interested in what they actually were. But I had been holding up, like we mentioned earlier, I had been holding off because I knew that was something that I knew you wanted to show it to me, and I didn't want to watch it without you. And I'm one of those people where I firmly believe that you have to be, for certain movies, for certain types of movie, you have to be with the right audience in order to get the most out of it. Like I know if I watched these movies alone by myself in a dark room, I don't think I would enjoy them nearly as much as sitting next to a person who loves it.
Yeah, it's to me, it's like the horror film principle, right?
Right.
Like if you watch a horror movie, and everyone's talking and chatting during it, it's not scary at all because you're not letting it take you on the journey of the scare of the moment of that
Right.
kind of thing. This franchise, and I think this also of like the movie you and I, another big movie in our friendship, The Fifth Element.
Yeah.
Where it's like I did not like that movie, and I watched it again, and it's fine. But you love it, and I should have waited to watch it with you because then I think I'd probably like it.
I agree. I love that movie wholeheartedly. Luc Besson's a piece of shit, but I love that movie wholeheartedly. I think that movie is like, it has flaws, but I think it's so good and so fun. And like it is such a fun, silly movie in a very similar way to the Fast movies. I think it is similarly sincere and similarly silly. While also, and like, I think something that the Fast series, at least once like Tokyo Drift and Forced and Furious, what they have going for them is the like actual practical race sequences. I also think that's something that the Fifth Element has going for it, because it like so much of the effects and the costumes and makeup and all that kind of stuff and the props are all real and done in camera, and they all look so good even today. I think both of them have a lot more in common than meets the eye, and they're both a lot of fun.
And the Fast and Furious, the other thing I love about them as a mega fan is how much they refuse to be one thing.
Right.
Because the Perception, big dumb car movie.
Yeah.
But the first one has them like drag racing and stealing DVD players. And the fourth one has them taking down a drug cartel.
Right.
And it only gets crazier and bigger and like...
Right.
But, you know, we joke about Dom gaining clairvoyance for a moment and solving a crime.
Having his force vision.
Yeah, but like the amount of commitment within the movie almost makes it like work. Like
100%.
Everyone in all of these movies, there is not one of these first four where you don't believe that all the characters, all the actors think this is not the best thing ever. They're so committed and so into it.
Right.
In the best way possible. It's I kind of talk about this with like Thor: Love and Thunder, which is a movie that I don't really care for.
Yeah.
Asking me to invest in a world it clearly doesn't want to invest in for the sake of humor. That is not a problem with the Fast and Furious movies.
No.
All of the characters buy in, all of the actors buy in, the directors go all the way. Like it's top to bottom, just people putting every ounce of their effort in and believing in what they're doing.
Right.
And that's what makes them so endearing.
Right.
Yeah. And so you liked these first four.
Yes.
To varying degrees.
Degrees. I think there's a lot to like with these movies. I mean, like, obviously they're not perfect. They're very silly, but in a great way. Like, I don't know. As I've grown older, I have enjoyed movies that were clearly a ton of fun to like make, and like that clearly everybody is like full, like putting their heart into. Like, so often you see movies that just kind of feel like a cash grab, you know, whether it's a cheap movie that's just like poorly made and they obviously weren't trying that hard, or a very expensive movie that they're just there for the money. Like, I appreciate movies and series like this where it's like clearly the creative people involved in this movie, these movies actually cared about making a good and fun experience, like to varying degrees of success. But I think all of them are fun.
Oh, yeah. All of them are fun. All of them are committed. And like you just see like Too Fast, Too Furious, right? Like Tyrese Gibson shows up to take over the Vin Diesel role, who didn't return. And he is having the time of his life in that movie. In all of these movies, when he pops back up in a little bit, he's equally having as much fun.
I'll admit. Okay, so like Tokyo Drift obviously was a very large departure where like we only had Dom come back in a cameo at the very end.
Right at the end.
Everybody else is are new characters.
Which may or may not play into the later narrative, by the way. The other thing is the timeline for these movies.
Oh, right.
Completely out of whack.
I am, okay, so to go back a little bit on like my experience with these movies, I am a little bit aware of like the timeline and all that kind of stuff. Like I think part of that is in the Patrick H. Willems video. So I'm a little bit aware of like Han, you know, coming back and you know, or like spoilers for these movies. Sorry, guys. Han dies in Tokyo Drift.
Han dies in Tokyo Drift and then is immediately in the beginning of Fast and Furious.
Right. So it's like clear that we're like, is it supposed to be confusing that he's there?
Well, here's the thing.
okay, he does have that line where it's like, oh, maybe I'll go check some stuff out in Tokyo. So I think it's supposed to be clear that like he leaves here or in the thinking of making this movie, because he clearly comes back in future movies, is that like he goes from Fast and Furious to Tokyo Drift. So as if Fast and Furious is a prequel to Tokyo Drift in some way.
Yeah, right. So in the history of that character, which is, again, part of what I love about this franchise is Justin Lin came in to direct Tokyo Drift. And he directs Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious, Fast 5, Fast 6, and then comes back for 9. This is his franchise.
Right. And then tried to come back
saga.
for 10.
Tried to come back for 10, and we're not going to talk about that.
We will have, when I'm sure we will come back to this.
You'll hear my extensive rant in the episodes to come.
I'm excited.
But so that's the thing is Han was a character in his Justin Lin's first movie.
Right.
And then he came back in this one as the same character in this weird, like, different thing. It's the same character, same name, but in Justin Lin's first movie, he chain smokes, which you can't do in PG-13 movies.
Right.
So in the Fast and the Furious, he just constantly is snacking on stuff.
And I want to be one of his little snacks, dear God.
If you didn't, I would be worried. If you didn't, we'd be rethinking this friendship.
I made the joke while we were watching it. I was like, this man is truly the female gaze. He's like, not only is he just an attractive man, he is also like the most confident man in the room while also not having to prove it,
Completely.
There's just something like, he's hot. I'm sorry. Man. He's hot. So I really like that character just because he's a good looking I only like him because he's hot. No, I do think he's like a really fun character. And I was honestly like, I don't know how we want to structure this. Do we want to go movie to movie, or do we just want to kind of have a freewheeling conversation?
I think we're going to go movie to movie, and then we'll kind of just talk about the interplay a little bit.
Yeah.
But
before we jump into that, the last thing I was going to say about Han is I am a little disappointed at just the cameo that he has in Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
I want him to have, and he will. I know. Will have a much.
Do
larger
you though?
role.
Do you know that?
Do I know that he'll be in future movies?
Yeah. Do you know that?
Yes, I do.
Well. This has been me doing this to him the whole time.
Literally the entire time. I'm like, hey, is he going to be in the next one? I don't know. And it's like, no, but you do. It's like, yeah, well, all right, just
who's
give me
to say?
Yeah, who's to say? He just won't give me a straight answer with any of my questions, and I want to kill him for it. Okay, anyways.
Okay, but The Fast and the Furious, which is, in my opinion, maybe the most 90s movie ever to come out in 2001.
I did not realize it came out in 2001. I literally thought it was made in 97 or something like that. I did not look at the date.
If you watch it, it's impossible to tell. It's the most 90s movie ever.
True.
And look, with the first one, it has to be said, it's just a Point Break, but with cars. That's all it is.
It is Motorhead Point Break.
I mean, Vin is the Patrick Swayze character.
Yeah.
Paul Walker is the Keanu Reeves character.
Literally kind of doing a Keanu Reeves impression. In the weirdest way. Like, there's a few lines where it's like, dude, did you just pull that from the script? Or did you just pull that, like, line read, like, directly from Keanu?
100%.
Yeah.
That being said, I have seen The Fast and the Furious, the first one, so much more than I have seen Point Break.
I mean, I've definitely seen Point Break more. That being said, like, I've only seen it maybe a few times. But now I've seen The Fast and Furious once.
Well, see, and, like, Point Break was kind of a diehard, right? Where, like, after it came out, there were several movies that kind of did and to be fair, Keanu was in a Die Hard movie. He was in Speed, which is Die Hard on a bus.
This is very true.
So that to me is not a genuine critique of the movie.
No.
It's just like important to note that it is that.
That is like popular media 101 is like you see success with something, you do your version of it.
Exactly.
And like and like with like two varying degrees of success, I think you get movies and I think it's exactly the same case in like video games too. Like you get like literally whole genres are sprung out of copying other videos. You get like Metroidvanias, which are literally just copies of like Metroid and Castlevania. You get roguelikes and roguelikes and Souls-likes and all those kinds of games where it's like one hugely popular, influential piece of media then gets copied and recopied and changed, and you know, with individuals kind of people's individual spin on each of those pieces of media. And so it's like not a bad thing, not a dig. That being said, it is very, very similar.
It's the same movie. It's the same plot with a lot of the same emotional beats. You know what I mean? Like, I find this, and this is my personal experience with these movies, right? I believe I saw like the opening scene of this one like years before I ever watched it, just on TV. Right. And then I think I saw 5, and then I saw 1. Right. And so there's this weird thing, and I'll be very curious what you think when we get there. I fell in love with these movies after the next trilogy of them, which is like the 5, 6, 7, which you haven't seen yet. Going back, I love them more because you see where it's going, and you see the kernels of like what, because it's not a setup. They didn't know where this was going. Clearly, it's just the thing where they look back and they go, what are the things we like about this previous version? Right. And they take it and up it 1,000% later. Right. Which is amazing, right? Like the themes of like the gang and the family, the somewhat honorable criminal, you know, the criminal with a family,
the criminal with a code.
Exactly. And you know, and Vin Diesel in his like grizzly, like growly voice. Where's my family? Give him a Corona, give him keys to a car, and give him his
so disappointed
family.
that we don't have Coronas right now. We're doing that. I know. We are doing that the next time we watch the next trilogy. We're drinking Coronas, and we will also be drinking Coronas in the next episode. I have deemed it so.
But so, what did you think, like, ultimately with this one versus something like Too Fast, Too Furious, which ups the comedy a little bit? Like, this one's a bit more straightforward.
Like, okay, this, I think of all of the movies that I've seen so far, this one, I think the part that I enjoyed about it wasn't the races and the action. It was a little bit more of the story and the characters and stuff, which in later films I really, really enjoyed. Like the action sequences and the driving were actually quite thrilling once we get to like Tokyo Drifting On, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I think I'll be honest, the drag races are not very interesting.
No, they're 10-second races that take 5 minutes to play out on screen. It's
literally
all CG.
It's who hits the NOS button too quickly loses the race.
Yeah, they're not exactly thrilling.
And so like I think my enjoyment from this one at least came from like the everybody, just like it came from the characters. Because I mean, like like you've mentioned earlier, everybody is like full into this. Like they know what movie they're in. But do they know what their movie they're in? Because everybody's acting like they're in Hamlet. They are acting like this is the most serious stuff on the planet. And
I'll say this though, like when we're watching it, you kind of look at me. There's the part where Jesse, he's like the tech guy for the crew in the first movie. Yeah. Where he's kind of like talking about how he struggled with ADD and like his dad's in jail, right? And that's why he couldn't do college, but he's kind of brilliant. And you looked at me and you went, he's a real guy with real problems. Like joking, right? But then you get to the scene where you find out what happened with Dom and like he beat that man almost. And you didn't say nothing. You were just like, by that point, you kind of like, yeah, I know what movie this is. And I know they're going to be Shakespearean and crazy. Like, you know what I mean? But I think the actors sell it. Because like eventually these movies pull some of the craziest talent of any like mainstream media I've ever seen. Right. These early ones, like Vin Diesel had obviously done stuff. He was a name. Paul Walker was a name. But they're not like the greatest actors of a generation or anything. But they commit to it. And so I commit to it. You know what I mean? Right. Like I just buy that Paul Walker is this like strained guy trying to do the right thing, but really he might just be into the crime life, which is like so entertaining to me. And then we move on to Too Fast, Too Furious.
The horniest. So we made.
We're gonna rank these on level of horny. Like,
I mean, if we're ranking on a level of horny, there is no beating Too Fast, Too Furious because it has as me and Spencer have come to find out, it has all 3 levels of horniness.
The 3 levels of horniness within the Fast and Furious franchise.
Within the Fast and Furious.
Horny for the girls.
Horny for the girls.
Horny for the boys.
Horny for the boys, which I think is an important one to hit on.
Very important.
And also horny for the cars.
And also horny for the cars, which is just so apparent.
Right. I mean, like, the opening scene between Paul Walker and Tyrese, their fight, is the most homoerotic thing on the planet, and I love it.
They're in
so
love with
much.
each other.
They had a very tumultuous, very sexual relationship that ended really poorly. But it is clear that when they were hot, they were hot.
To be double clear, this is headcanon between us. This is not like story world
Oh,
canon.
I know this is not headcanon. It's subtext.
It's subtext, yeah.
Like a verging on text. The
amount of times they just like lovingly gaze into one another's eyes.
The amount of times Paul Walker wraps his arms around Tyrese in this movie, he does it like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Hey, man," you know what I mean? It's like look. Don't get me wrong. Like I think the boys should be able to hug the boys and it not be like, "Oh, gay." Like no, you should be.
This is different though.
This is different. The way like literally from the first time they see each other, they're supposed to be fighting, but it's just them like rolling on the ground, and it's just like
wrapped in each other's arms.
Wrapped in each other's arms, getting all dirty on the ground. Like there's some heat there. And then the police chief or is he the FBI chief? Whatever chief.
Yeah, he's heading the FBI investigation.
He's just sitting there watching, eating his popcorn, enjoying the show.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
How hot is that?
It's amazing.
Like, and so like I am 100% here for Paul Walker and Tyrese's relationship in this movie, because Tyrese is like having the time of, like, just like you said, like everybody in this movie is having the time of their life, except with one exception. I think the dude who plays the like mob boss or whatever he had, the
in Too Fast, Too Furious.
In Too Fast, Too Furious.
Yeah.
And like I also I don't know if it's necessarily like the actor's fault or it's just like the writing. He's just like boring. He's just like of the villains in all of this suite of the 4 movies, he is by far the least interesting character.
I agree with that. And like, look, it's a Fast and Furious movie. The first one doesn't have a traditional villain. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's much more like an investigation, and then we realize it's this character we've been following with Dom that we have come to like and appreciate. Right. And then the second one goes to the traditional villain route. But the second one is way more of like a buddy movie, which if you look at like the Lethal Weapon series, right? You're here for the dynamic between the two buddies more than you're here for the villain.
Right, but that doesn't mean to say that like
but it does, no.
That doesn't excuse the fact that we could have had at least slightly.
Well, then you
more
look at Fast and Furious, right? And those villains are like at least characterized in a certain way. They make choices.
There's something happening more than with
this guy.
I don't even remember. I cannot think of a single trait other than the fact that he smokes cigars.
He smokes cigars, and he is very controlling of women. So.
Yeah. Oh, and Eva Mendes gets such short shrift in this movie. She has like 5 lines for the entire movie, and it's Eva Mendes.
Well, it double hurts, right? Because they're implying a relationship between Eva Mendes and Paul Walker's characters, when all of us are not here for that. We're here for Paul and Tyrese. That's what we're doing.
No kidding. It's like, look, y'all can be bisexual. We want that bisexual representation. That being said, I only want to see Paul Walker and Tyrese. I would pay
very attractive men.
Very attractive. The shot where Tyrese rips off his shirt and bro, come on, he's like showing off. You know what I mean? Like,
well, no,
he's like, you remember this body? Yeah. Like, yes, I will remember it for the rest of my days. Tyrese, I'm sure Paul remembers it very well.
Ultimately, with the second one, because I think the second one might be a lot of people's least favorite in the series, which I don't understand.
I enjoyed the second one a lot.
Well, and here's the thing. The second one also is way like there's a couple of races, right, that utilize too much CGI, but ultimately lots of practical stunts, lots of practical races, and the races are more thrilling. Like there's beats to them, you know?
They
like
actually introduced turning.
Yeah.
they
Who'd have thought? What a novel concept.
An innovation. Turning in a race and an action sequence. Like it's amazing.
You know, and it loses some of that, like the Vin Diesel dynamic, like the Paul Walker Vin Diesel dynamic, I think to me is like the one that makes the franchise, especially later.
Right.
But in this one, it's like I buy them. I get it. I'm in. I like these guys.
They've got a fun back and forth.
It feels like they've known each other for a long time, and it feels like they've definitely made sweet, sweet love.
Sweet, passionate, tender
love. But then the weird thing, and this is another weird thing with the franchise in general, right? Where we were talking about after Fast and Furious, it's weird that the fourth movie is really a sequel to the first movie, and the middle one is like, yes, it deals with the ramifications of Paul Walker letting Vin Diesel go,
right?
But it's not about that. It's about him and his other friend,
right?
And then Tokyo Drift is just like Tokyo Drift, which now we'll bust into that one,
yeah.
Again, the introduction of Justin Lin, who like made this saga what it is, in my opinion.
And I think it's interesting that his introduction, and as you say, like the one who kind of owns this saga in a certain way, and like what it became. It's interesting that this one is completely separate from the rest in a lot of ways. I mean, like our main characters, for all I know, whatever his name, I don't even remember the main character's name or the actor either. Lucas Black.
Sean.
Sean. I don't know if he comes back. I'm not aware if he does or not. He probably doesn't. I just don't know it yet. But like,
there's really no way to tell.
There's no way of knowing. It feels like this one, of all of them, feel the most separate, and it by far feels the most different from the other two. I mean, the other two are like feel very similar, or at least in terms of like the filmmaking, like the craft, feel very similar to one another. Tokyo Drift feels like a completely different
it's
movie.
got a lot of the same tropes, but they're filmed in entirely different ways. Like they make, in my opinion, they make bolder visual choices with these movies.
It's like the first one in the franchise for me that I'm like, oh, this is an actually good looking movie.
Yeah. You note it at least,
right?
And the driving is way cooler.
So much,
you know what I mean? The drifting rules, the practicality within it.
Right. I think like the driving sequences are so well shot as compared to the other ones are just like less interesting. The thing that I struggle with on a visual level is like, it's so funny because I feel like the driving sequences in Tokyo Drift are very clear. Like you understand who is where and how it's working. Where I feel like the hand-to-hand combat sequences are an absolute travesty. I can't understand.
There are not many. There's only a couple times.
Oh, there's like
usually it's one character beating up somebody else.
This is true.
But that being said, like, and this is another thing we talked about a little bit, and I want to break into more now, is that all of these things we're talking about with Tokyo Drift, right? It's visually more interesting. The driving is cooler, but the story is like, I don't give a crap about Sean and his struggles. You know what I mean?
Or whatever his love interest name was, the Australian chick. I did not.
Into it.
They were the two least interesting characters in the entire movie. I was so much more interested in Han, so much more interested in Takashi. I was so much more interested in literally everyone else even Bow Wow's character.
He like Tyrese is just having the time of his life in these movies.
Bow Wow's just happy to get a gig.
And like here's and I also think this is important. Han is maybe the best character in any of these movies.
Good to know. That's okay. So that's why I want to bone him so bad.
Yeah, we all do. Best hair in the business.
Best hair in the business.
But yeah, Han is just like this. Like use all the reasons we said earlier, right? He's just like this confident, cool guy, and he doesn't have to prove that. Like, all of that just carries over so much. He is. It's tough. Like, it's a Fast and Furious movie. We're talking about interesting characters. They're all not stereotypes. What was the word I'm talking about? Archetypal characters. Yeah. You know what I mean? But the dynamics work, and I talk about this a lot, where it's like, I'm of the few mega fans of this franchise that is into it for the story a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I care about Brian O'Connor and Dominic Toretto's dynamic. I care about that. I care about the family and how much it means to them. Like, Letty dying in 4 is like, wow, you know? And all of that feels just absent in Tokyo Drift. Like, you get the cool stuff, like every cool good scene, like the one on the roof, he's like, why'd you let me drive your car? And Han's like, oh, what's one car to figure out who you really? Like, that stuff is very on the nose, not subtle, but it works because Han sells it, right? It makes so much sense that he is the character that like popped back up in the next one, even though he died in this one. Right. You know, like they knew what they had with him and they were like, okay, we got to do something with this.
Right. Yeah. I like I said, like I think Yeah, this one feels the most separate in like every way possible. It's just like you said, like the commitment between the inclusion of Paul Walker or Dom, I think is necessary to the movie working to me so far. Cause like I liked like from a like a filmmaking perspective, I liked this one the most up to this point.
Yeah.
Just because like it is like genuinely the most thrilling.
I think Justin Lin's the best director they've had to this point, and
100%.
kind of in the franchise in general. I mean, James Wan makes one eventually.
Right.
And James Wan, I love James Wan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like Justin Lin just gets what he's doing with
Right.
these movies better than anyone who's ever helmed one.
And where it works on a visual level, it does not work on a story level.
Agreed.
Like I just think the main character, whatever, Sean, so boring, so boring.
The thickest accent you've ever heard.
Dear Lord, baby Jesus, lying in a manger. I could not. I just couldn't get past it. I just did not like him in this movie. Partially is the writing. I also just like, I understand he's supposed to feel like a fish out of water. And so having the accent makes somewhat sense, but he's also a white man and an American in Tokyo. He didn't need to be, a Sling Blade to be able to, like, we didn't need that. He's also in
I
Sling
didn't know
Blade.
this movie starred Billy Bob Thornton.
He's also
You
in.
know what I mean?
Lucas Black is also in Sling Blade. I looked up his filmography. And he's also in Sling Blade.
I didn't know he's in.
I don't know what he does. I haven't seen Sling Blade kill me. I just don't think we needed that as well in order to have the kind of fish out of water narrative. Like he literally just could have been a white guy. He could have just been an American in Japan.
Yeah. Well, and then this I think is an important conversation to have when talking about these movies in general, and I really think it starts here, is the diversity within them.
Yes.
Like, of any major mainstream movie, the Fast and Furious saga kind of has the best diversity.
Right.
Like, and I mean that both in front of and behind the camera.
Right. I think that's important. I noted when we were watching Tokyo Drift, I was like, I think there's at least something to be said for a movie taking place in Japan to have to be helmed by an Asian director. There's at least something to be said for that, where like a lot of other franchises can't say the same, especially when Tokyo Drift came out, which was like 2006
around that, yeah.
So it's like there's something to be said for like, hey, this movie is taking place in Japan and deals a lot with Japanese culture, for better or for worse. I do think there's something. I mean, like it does have a lot of diversity in the casting, but it's not exactly like some of the portrayals aren't like great portrayals.
No.
But there is still something to be said for the.
And I think it's very important to know. It's like it starts here, right?
It starts here.
Like as we start progressing, more main characters are people of color,
right?
And like they're better defined, they're more characterized. So it gets better and better. And I think 10 will be the first white man directing one of these movies since Justin Lin took this one.
Who directed Too Fast and Furious? John Singleton, an African American man.
There we go.
Or a black man. I don't actually know if he's from from America. Excuse me.
But yeah, so like right, the first one's directed by him, and then it just becomes this like in front of and behind the camera, lots of diversity, and it gets better as it goes. You know what I mean? So I think that's really, really cool. And another weird thing, as we're going to start jumping into Fast and Furious now. So Paul Walker, Vin Diesel are in the first one.
Right.
Vin Diesel chooses not to come back for 2, right? Because this franchise started as like Paul Walker's thing.
Like a Paul Walker
Walker
vehicle. Yeah.
Exactly.
Vehicle.
Oh, they're cars.
Oh my God, it's cars. But I said vehicle. It's really good. Okay.
Comedy gold.
Genius.
So it starts that, and then Too Fast, Too Furious brings in Tyrese Gibson, right? They kind of, at the end, they're not setting up a sequel, but they're setting up that these two are going to hang out together and maybe do a sequel.
Right.
That doesn't happen, but they take the Fast and Furious name and do like a anthology one almost.
Right.
Which is super weird, but Vin chooses to come back to do the cameo in that.
Which feels like a reshoot.
It feels a little bit like a reshoot. I mean, it ends the movie on that note, right? Of them racing.
Right.
So it's weird, but then they get everybody to come back.
Literally everyone.
Vin Diesel comes back. Michelle Rodriguez comes back. Han comes back. What's her name? She plays Mia.
I don't know the actress's name, but Mia.
Mia comes back. Paul Walker comes back. It's like
Jordana something.
Jordana Brewster.
There you go.
That's her name. They all come back to do this movie.
Right.
it's just fascinating to me that that's this franchise. The franchise, it as much as later it's defined by knowing what it does and doing it incredible. At the beginning, it's defined by like its lack of knowing what it wants to be.
Right.
Which is my favorite part about these first four is that like they're all so different from one another.
Truly. Like not one feels like the other.
Fast and Furious, the fourth one, is Fast and Furious by the way of Michael Mann. Like it feels like a Michael Mann movie. Like not a great Michael Mann movie. No. But like it has like the on-foot chase scene through stuff, which is like you noted, kind of like the one from Seven.
It's where they're in the apartment building.
The introduction to Paul Walker's character,
and there's like several shots where I was like, that was ripped right out of Seven. Yeah, which no shade.
And I'll say this though, that chase scene, it does some interesting things from like a character and an action sense. Like when the guy's climbing the fence and Brian's trying to catch him and he jumps up and
knocks him
shoulder
off.
bashes
I
him off.
loved that.
That's a great note. Inclusion. Like the tense moment where like the guy's waiting for Brian to come through the door because he's gonna shoot him and Brian dives out the window and tackles him.
A good reversal.
It's like it's got beats, and that comes from Justin Lin being a really good director, knowing how to tell the story in an interesting way.
Right.
This is like from you get the first one that's very self-serious in a lot of ways. 2 and 3 not taking themselves. The 3 takes itself pretty seriously, but 2 is like almost a straight up buddy comedy.
I think how not seriously it takes itself when every time they hit the NOS, the world around them
back in
they hit warp speed and they travel through the 2001 Space Odyssey. You know, like it's just. All of those moments where it's just like, are they really?
They committed hard to that stuff.
Committed very hard to that for better. And then by 3, luckily they dropped that.
They dropped that. You get it a time like for the climaxes through this like CGI tunnel, which is a bit of a bummer.
Oh, God,
it's like
that.
Because the funny thing is, before that, when the chase out in the desert is a lot of fun,
it's so
practical driving, way cooler. And then they get in this tunnel, and you're like,
and then everything just turns to CGI.
It's just CGI cars.
It's bad. Yeah, every time it's in that tunnel, which they're in that tunnel for a
like
long
5 minutes,
time, it just it's like my interest immediately disappears.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the big in the other race earlier in the movie where they're trying to like get the spot, and it's the first time. Brian and Dom have like raced each other since,
And I love the callbacks. We mentioned it earlier in the episode. Forced and Furious is very much a sequel to the Fast and Furious, the original, where it's like there's like what does he say? Still a buster. Like he's referencing and quoting things that happened in the first movie. Too early Dom where it hits the NOS too early. Yeah. Like we're fully hitting beats and references to the first movie, and we're picking up right where Dom and
Brian. And that's kind of one of my favorite things, right? It's like we don't exactly know if it's like in real world time how much time it says. Whatever, it doesn't really matter.
Not at all.
But what I like about it is that these wounds are fresh for both of them. Right. You know what I mean? It is a personal thing that Dom is doing, and it's a personal thing that Brian is doing because Dom is doing, you know what I mean? Like they buy into like this is obviously the most I think Shakespearean in terms of acting so far, right? Where like
God, Vin Diesel is taking it so seriously.
I know, but like don't
in the best way. In the best way,
you kind of love it. Though.
I don't mean that in any way. I appreciate that it's not winking.
Yeah,
like I appreciate
you
that.
And I talk a lot about committing to like it's the thing of like franchise movies a lot now. Like Uncharted, you didn't see Uncharted, I don't think, but that movie is so winky and naughty. It's like we know we're ridiculous. It's like no. I want to buy into this. Let me buy into it.
It's like the Uncharted games don't do that.
No,
I appreciate very much that they are taking it seriously, and they're not winking. But it's still kind of silly. It's still fun, but like they're not treating it like a silly movie. They're treating it like real life. They're treating it like I believe that Dominic Toretto is going to get revenge on Phoenix and Braca or whatever.
Yeah.
I believe that he's going to get revenge on these dudes for killing the love of his life. And he is fully here for it, and he's putting 100% genuine effort into it.
And like they do interesting things with the characters in this movie, right? Like Letty does what she does to try to clear Dom's name so he can come back and they can be together, right?
Right.
That's kind of the reveal. So he gets like the moment you find this out, right? Like Dom attacks Brian.
Right.
And Brian's like, she did it for you, but you feel the guilt where he's like, it is my fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He knows it, and then that altercation stops. Dom walks away, and you can tell he feels the guilt too, because he's the one that left her.
Right.
Like, they're not just making these massive leaps. They're going, no, we laid the groundwork. It's simple and it's broad,
Right.
but it's a story.
Yeah.
It's like in a really interesting way. And again, it's a Michael Mann movie. Like, it's very self-serious, very like, and then it's also fun and funny, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole them squaring off before the race. He's like, you sure you want to do this? Lots changed, Dom. It's like they're just calling each other out. It's
right.
When Paul Walker's driving, he's trying to get back on the course, and he just goes, "Sorry, car," and like whips it off.
Yeah.
But like he's not doing it in a funny way. He's doing it like he's working himself up to making the choice, right? Which is so much more entertaining than the wink and nod we get all the time now.
The scene where he absolutely bodies that dude in the FBI, where he like comes up and he's like, "Hey, what were you doing?" And he's just like,
"Don't you ever get my perp again!"
And he absolutely kicks the shit out of him. And then the FBI director, or whatever, he's like, "Get out of here!" He's like, "But he's the one who hit me first. You saw him hit me first." Like
this isn't the Cub Scouts.
It's like,
go. You're bleeding on my floor.
You're bleeding on my floor. It's like, and then hard cut to him sitting in the chair and he's bruised.
His eyes are a little watery.
Yeah,
like,
it's great.
It's so entertaining.
There's moments of levity, but then you cut to Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel is doing.
Vin Diesel, like, head in his hands, be like, my family.
Yeah. Well, I also love this is where we heighten the series too. You know what I mean?
This definitely feels like the beginning of what.
Yes, of what it becomes.
For better or for worse, I keep saying that. For better or for worse, this is kind of what, because I think it's like it's so serious that it doesn't quite have the same level of fun that I know the other ones will.
Correct.
And like, I'm excited for the like getting the team together. You know what I mean? Like it felt like that was one thing that I felt was lost, was that it was, I was like, I want Han, I want Tyrese, I want, people that I know who are going to be here in later movies. I'm ready for them to be here now.
And that's the thing about this one, right? Is it brings us back into the world of Toretto and the world of Brian, right? And then we get to kind of experience the weird bigness of it. They bring Tyrese back and they bring Tej back. You know what I mean?
Right. I forgot about Luda.
They start bringing everybody back. And like this movie ends on something like that, right? Where like Dom is being driven to prison after getting like a 25 to life sentence.
Right.
And then it's like this really sad, kind of almost operatic moment, right? Where the bus is like driving and he's like sad and chained in the bus. And
I gotta do this.
And then all of a sudden,
I ain't running no more.
All of a sudden the music kicks in and the three cars roll up and it's Mia, Brian, and then the two guys you see at the beginning that are part of the crew who also come back later.
Oh,
you know
sick.
what I mean?
Okay, cool.
So it's like, and then it ends with the cars like whipping in front of the camera and you're like, they're about to bust this dude out.
And it's like literally a reference to, I'm pretty sure that's how the first movie opens, right? Is with the three cars, them breaking into the...
Yeah, but hijacking the
trailer.
semi, yeah.
So it's like even referencing that. Mm-hmm. It's like we've come... Like, honestly, like, there's a world where you can make an argument that this could have been the last movie in the series. You know what I mean?
Yeah, ending on kind of they break him out and then they go on the lam. And that's it.
Right.
Yeah, so we get there and then like it kind of explodes from here. And like I'll say this too, like it's the only franchise where the fifth one is like somehow shockingly by far the best one.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I've heard as such.
The jump in quality is insane. And like 5, 6, 7 make a good little trilogy.
Yeah.
It's really interesting what they kind of decide to do with it and how hard they commit and how well they do it. And their full-blown commitment to like practical effects in these movies, which is so cool.
I appreciated that so much with when Justin Lin came in with Tokyo Drift and with Force and Furious. I'm going to call that Force and Furious every time. When he took over, like you can there's some CGI. There's going to have to be some CGI. That being said, so much of it is practical. So much more of it is practical. Where in the first two, every time there's a race. And like 2 is better about it than the first one, I think.
Two films, some races. Like the first one has like the third act is pretty much all practical in one way or another, right? Where like them jumping on the semi trying to get the guy off and like the cars.
Yeah.
But all of the races are CGI in the first one, other than like Race Wars when they go and they kind of do that stuff. It's like, but they're not that. This is It's like exactly who pushes the NOS button later. It's like the whole thing.
No, Monica.
One of the best lines.
Shout out to Ja Rule. Hope your day is going well. hope you're feeling good, Ja.
So that being said, so you've seen the first 4 movies, right? Do you have like a ranking for them thus far, like in terms of your enjoyment specifically, not necessarily quality?
My enjoyment specifically, and this is going to be the hottest of takes, but I think I enjoyed the second one the most.
I've been a Too Fast, Too Furious defender for a long time, so I love this.
It is far from the best.
Yeah.
But was it the one I enjoyed the most? Yes, because I want to watch Tyrese and Paul Walker bone. Like, no, I'm just kidding. I just thought that like their relationship was super fun. I thought the action sequences as compared to the first were way more
much
fun.
better.
Much more thrilling. They actually turned, which was crazy. I thought it was a fun movie. Like if I'm ranking honestly in terms of like quality, I don't know that I struggle with this. I think they're all very even in a lot of ways for me because I think
because it's the franchise thus far has like sacrificed craft for story or just been like weird committed to the simplicity of the story, but the craft is a little bit eh.
It's like they're definitely like punching up and down on the sliders of certain things where it's like the first one like has a more interesting story because they just ripped it off Point Break. But like the action sequences are not fun at all. But like I think the acting is
that being said, the first one has one of the craziest stunts in that opening scene, right? Where like they're driving and the one car goes under the semi and drives under it for real.
Literally, when that happened in the movie, Spencer was sitting next to me and I literally gasped.
It was so great.
When the car goes underneath the semi in the first movie. I was not expecting that at all. So I was like,
and then they play on that gag in 2, but the car gets run over, which is like, by the way, I believe not supposed to happen, and the stuntman lived and was fine, but like it was supposed to kind of get crushed and then flip out the other side,
right?
But it goes gets crushed under the back wheels.
Terrifying, horrifying.
But that whole race sequence is fun. You know what I mean? You got Paul Walker like driving backwards, and him and Tyrese are racing each other versus everyone else.
That is a lot of fun.
Such a good time.
It's Tyrese and Paul Walker's relationship that really carries me through that in a way that I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I honestly like I know you're looking for a ranking, but I don't know if I have one because like I think they all have things that the other that is better than any other one. Like I think the visuals the visuals and the world are so interesting in 3. I think the like operatic story is like a lot of fun in 4. That being said, I think it takes it way too slow. And I think the like some of the action sequences, some of are like everything that happens in those freaking tunnels, and there's like 2 sequences of them driving through these freaking tunnels, and they're super boring. I think they all have things that go well. I mean, like I mentioned, the relationship between Tyrese and Paul Walker in number 2 is like a ton of fun, and then like the relationship between Dom and Dom and who? What? Chris? What's his name? The main character. Paul Walker.
Brian O'Connor.
Brian. Why,
Chris, you call him Chris. I was so confused.
Sorry. I think they all have things that like that is
you buy into the relationship.
I buy into that relationship. And I think each movie has something that it does better than all the other movies. So I don't really have a solid ranking.
Which is fine.
What would you say? Like on Letterboxd as we were watching them, I ranked number 2 as 3.5. I ranked number 1 as 3. And then I didn't rank the other 2 because I was struggling to like feel how I felt about it.
Well, okay, so for me and my like history, that I have showed a lot of people these movies. I got my brother into them. I got my cousin into them. I've gotten multiple other people. It's a thing where I'm like, I always try to get people to watch them because everyone's so judgy about them, but they're like the most fun you'll ever have.
They are a ton of fun.
So I've shown people a lot, and I would never show people Tokyo Drift. I'd be like, if you want to watch it on your own. I don't really want to watch Tokyo Drift.
Really?
Because I did not like it.
Yeah.
In watching it, I watched Tokyo Drift twice this year. I watched it earlier this year, and then I watched it again the other night when we watched it. And my ranking might change a little. I'll have to look at it because it just as a foreshadowing thing, 9 might be my least favorite in the franchise.
Spoilers.
Saga.
Spoilers
for my opinions on these movies. So I don't know. I got to look at it, but I personally, I fully buy into 1. Like I just invest in it because of my love for specifically 5.
Right.
So 1 might be like of these first 4 my favorite, and then 2, and then 4, and then 3. If I were to rank them, like that's kind of where I'm at.
I think I would put 4 last personally,
which I totally get. Again, it's like that one is so much less fun, but I appreciate the commitment to it, and there's certain things about it that I really love.
It feels like a setup for the future more than like it feels like it. Like I said, like it feels like a setup for the future. It feels like they're setting up the rest of this franchise in a really fun way. I really like how they're setting it up. That being said, like I just think it's like a little long and a little slow during certain sections, and I don't care about Paul Walker being a cop. I don't care about any of that stuff.
Oh yeah, no.
Get me out of there. I don't care about the FBI. Get me out of there.
I'm interested in the first one, right? Because you get this like one of the best character moments in the first one is when after the first race when he kind of spins out knowing he lost, and he's like catching his breath.
Right.
But they hold on it for a bit, and you realize, oh, he had a lot of fun doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You start realizing that, like, that's where it is. They just redo his story arc from the first one.
Literally.
And kind of the second one in this one.
They kind of reset. It almost feels like, like it's like a character reset. It's like, okay, so he lost his job in the first one. He was working with them, but wasn't an actual cop in the second one.
Ends up in Florida, ends up in Miami, and then now he's back in LA redoing the thing with him leaving the FBI because of this.
Now, and trying to catch Dominic Toretto. It's like the same story. So like that, I was like, I just don't care about any of that. Like, I know he's not going to be a cop.
It does give you like, again, very on the nose, insights into why he did it. And the first thing, the explanation he gives is, at that time, I had more respect for him than I did myself. And it's like, oh no, I buy that. I get that.
Yeah.
Which again, not subtle.
No.
But like, it works. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, and these first 4 are definitely like one thing, and then the rest of the franchise is something pretty different.
Right, and I'm excited for that.
Yes,
I think this is a great amuse-bouche.
Yeah,
to the rest of the series, a 4-film amuse-bouche, as it were.
Do you have any favorite lines of dialogue in these first 4?
No, Monica.
All timer. I think my favorite, the one I quote the most, is I said, forget about it, cuh. Like Paul Walker throwing that in Tyrese's face is the fun. Walking into a close up, like
cracker ass, white ass. Paul Walker. I said, forget about it, cuh.
He's wearing the baggiest shirts and the baggiest shorts in these first 2 movies. The second movie specifically.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that
Harley Davidson shirts. And,
how dare you? It's West Coast. It's West Coast.
That's
Choppers.
my bad. That's my bad, guys.
How dare you? You get your shit on straight, bud. Yes, it's like I think honestly of the ones that is the most memorable to me is like, no, Monica. Like I think that was the one that I had
still a Buster's a great line.
Yes,
like
still a Buster. Yeah, no, I do like that one too.
There's a lot, and then like I mean, there's a lot of like very self-serious lines that I think are very fun. Yeah. Like a lot of like. The one in the first one where he's like, ask any real racer. It's like, winning's winning, whether it's by an inch or by a mile. It's like, that's so fun.
It does have some good like one-liners and stuff like that. Throughout. I think throughout.
All of them do, yeah.
I think it's got some good lines in there for sure. That would not work in any other franchise.
Do you have a favorite character thus far?
Han? Like, I mean, he's not like so far. He's like thin just because he was just in 3.
And I'll tell you what. Like I said earlier, most interesting. I don't know. He's definitely the most intriguing automatically, right? Yes. Like you just instantly you're like, there's a lot bubbling under the surface with you, man.
Yes. Like, and I think that is probably
and kind of his like in the one. And I mentioned this to you where it's like I feel that Han's a little different later on,
right?
But that being said, you can feel this like tinge of sadness in his performance at times where it's like, and you like instantly like, I want to know what's up. Like,
right.
Which I love about him. I love about that character.
And I think so much of it has to do with the actor. I think so much of it is because of Sung Kang. I think a lot of what I enjoy about his performance comes just from him. Yeah,
it's one, the fun he's having in this movie. Right. Like there are moments where he's just committing so hard and having a great time, and then there are moments where it's like genuinely a really great performance you're giving right now.
There's depth in that character that aren't in any of the other characters in this movie.
So,
and he also doesn't he's also not the focal point.
Exactly. And then the other thing, are you do you have a favorite car? So thus far, has there been a car that stuck out to you the most?
I'll have to think about that one. That was a tough question.
I'll ask you a more broad one. Because there's a big thematic thing in these movies, right? Where like Dom is American muscle
versus import.
Brian's imports. You know? Are you team muscle or are you team import?
I'm definitely more team muscle.
I think so. Yeah. Now that being said, I think Brian drives obviously a much vaster variety of cars in these movies.
Right.
And some of them are way cooler than others. Like I really like the car he's driving. I believe it's a Skyline, a GTR Skyline. In Fast and Furious for the first time he's racing Dom again. I think that's what he's driving. And it's like, I like that car a lot.
Yeah.
You know, the one he drives in the third act, I don't care for. Like, no, but in terms of that, the Dodge Charger is Dom's go-to car. You know, doing wheelies left and right.
It's such a good, it's so great. The in Forced and Furious, at the end where he's like facing off against Phoenix and he's in the car and Phoenix starts shooting at him, so he pops a wheelie.
He uses the bottom of the car as a shield.
It's so good.
I love it so much.
It's so good.
It is. The movies commit to the silliest thing. Do you have a favorite stunt so far? Because later the stunt work becomes like great. You know, if there's a favorite stunt or sequence,
it would be in Tokyo Drift, but I can't think of a specific one. Because there wasn't really anything that I loved in Force and Furious, and there's nothing I loved in the Fast and the Furious. I think it would probably be in Tokyo Drift, but what it would be, I'm not exactly sure.
Because like I would put up in the Fast and the Furious, the first one, I put it the Contenders, the car going under and driving underneath it.
Okay,
like, that's
a
a crazy stunt.
All right, that's a cool stunt. Yeah, for sure.
You know, that's not a sequence. There's not a great like sequence in that movie, other than like the end is pretty good. It's like a serviceable, solid one.
Right.
You know. And I actually really do enjoy the final chase in the Fast and the Furious, where Brian's chasing the two guys on the motorcycle and Dom's kind of showing up.
Right.
And then they race each other at the end. But like, obviously not great, but I like it.
Yeah.
These movies in general, how do you feel as a collective, as a series? Like, because obviously the through line we already talked about, very muddled through these movies.
Oh, 100%.
But like, are you invested in the characters? You invested in the world, the crazy craft of it all? Like,
I am very much invested. I'm very excited for the future. Like I said, like I liked the first one. I really, really had a great time with the second one. The third one I thought was really well shot, and the action sequences and all the drifting and all that stuff was super fun. And the world that they created with that one was really fun. And then with the fourth one, it's like we're finally getting the characters back and the team back together. And I'm excited now that we've had the revenge and, you know, getting this team back together, or like together for the first time, actually. Getting this team together,
kind of jumping into the ensemble era of these movies,
and I'm very excited for that, because it felt Forced and Furious felt lacking in some way. It felt like there were pieces missing.
I agree,
and I feel like once we add Tej and we add Tyrese and we add like, you know, who I know is going to be in future installments, like The Rock, and like, you know, once we add all these new characters, I'm excited for because you know what it didn't feel like to me in Forced and Furious? A family. It did not feel like a family. It felt like Dom and Mia.
Like, you do kind of feel like the respect these two guys have for each other. Right. But like, other than that, it doesn't go deeper.
It's a brother and a sister, and the brother lost his wife.
5 is where it introduces the idea of this being a family. Like full blown, like Fast and Furious, it introduces this idea.
And it's there in 1. It's very much, I mean, it's very much that like Point Break, like he's got this like cult of personality around him. That he's family, where they're eating barbecue and drinking Coronas. You see that in the first one. And I missed that in Force.
You do, yeah. You miss kind of Dom's cast of characters. You know what I mean?
Because it's like it's Dom against the world, and I wish it was Dom. I wish it was
Dom and Du Bois against the world.
Right? Because it's like, I mean, there's two dudes. Oh, I can't remember.
Vince being the guy that hated Paul Walker, that kind of called him the whole time.
Yeah. Who, if the first one had a villain, it would be him.
Yeah, it would be him, or it would be the the guy that drives the Honda that Dom, like, they're kind of rival gang.
That's
it would be
true.
him, because he comes in at the end and he kills one of the family.
Okay, I think the guy, what's his name? You just said his name. The one who called Vince is very much Paul Walker's antagonist, and then the other guy is
Vin Diesel's.
Is Vin Diesel.
That's a great way to put that.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I think there's multiple antagonists. Where was I heading with this? I completely lost my.
I can't remember. This is great.
Anyways.
Now the kind of the point of this podcast in general is to like introduce each other to movies that we love and want to share, but also we're filmmakers.
Yeah.
We learn lessons from watching movies.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of start this, like, just give you a second to think about it, but is there lessons you learned from one of these movies in particular, the general idea of it, the broadness of it? Like, is there something? So, because like for me, every time I come back to them, it's simple. It's the commitment to the world.
Right.
It is owning the silliness. It is owning it and not looking at your audience and going, we know it's silly. It's not going, this is silly and we're buying into it 1,000%. Like kind of like what, Marvel, if you look at Marvel now versus then, the first Captain America movie commits to the camp. Yeah. But it works for specifically Captain America. It works for that movie. So my lesson is always like, figure out your characters, get to know them, define them well. Because like this thing, Brian is defined well. Dom is defined well.
Yeah.
Han and all the other cast of characters become defined well later. You know exactly who Roman is. You know exactly who Tej is.
Right.
Define them, find interesting character interactions, and commit.
Yeah.
Don't wink at the camera. Let them do what they're doing and own it.
Right.
Like that has always been my lesson with these movies is the commitment to the silly, the commitment to the fun, the commitment to the heart. Because that's what it is at the end of the day is you like that they love what they're doing and you like the passion on screen.
Right.
That for me is always what I come back to.
Yeah, I think winking can work. I think it can work. You have to know who your actor is and what the story is to know if winking can work. I think for a lot of Ryan Reynolds' recent filmography, he's done a lot of winking. And I think
it's hit or miss.
And it's hit or miss, but sometimes it's hit. Sometimes it works very much for what he's doing.
But you look at something like Ryan Reynolds in Free Guy, which I don't know if you saw Free Guy.
I haven't seen that one yet.
That's a movie that's like a lot. I honestly, like now that I haven't thought about this until now, but like its sincerity kind of matches the idea of the Fast and Furious where, yes, it's winking at the camera, but you also believe that this character believes everything he's doing.
Right.
And other people are kind of winking.
Right.
But by nature of the movie, it works.
Right.
And I think the Fast and Furious movies do that great. Like you have your audience POV character, right? Which is in the later movies, I think kind of becomes Roman a little bit.
Right.
Where he's a little bit the guy who's like, are we really doing this? But like in a way where you believe that character would do that. They know the character, they've defined him, and they use him.
Right. I think winking can work, but I definitely appreciate so much, like you said, like that they commit. Almost all, if not all actors know what movie they're in and they are bought in. They are here for it. Like, I mean, like I said, like the only guy that I have you don't know what movie you're in, is the dude in Too Fast, Too Furious, is the antagonist in that movie. He's like the only person who I feel like just doesn't quite know what movie he's in. I appreciate that everybody else does. Specifically the like, wow, I don't know. And to an extent, I think the Lucas Black in Tokyo Drift, I don't think he quite knows what movie he's in either. He just doesn't commit in the same way.
No, I agree with that. Yeah,
and so like,
but that movie's also so weird and different from the rest of them.
I just think that one's like maybe the most poorly written in terms of like the
weirdly the third movie in the franchise feels like the sophomore slump to me.
Literally, 100%.
Yeah, it's super interesting,
100%. And so it's like I think that is a good thing to take away from it. I think for me, just something that I learned about, and I know this about myself, is like I am willing to give a movie more of a pass if they look good. I know this about myself.
I talk about this a lot where like I'm way more like if the story works, it can look kind of simple.
I'm a very visual person. And so it's like the minute Tokyo Drift looked better, I was like, all right, at least it looks good. You know what I mean? Like at least I can enjoy this from that perspective. That being said, like I do think the world that they built around the characters is also very interesting, and we still had Han, sweet Han,
sweet Han.
So like one thing I appreciated, and one thing I talked about earlier is the clarity of the driving sequences in in Tokyo Drift versus kind of the other two at that point, and even to 4 to a certain extent. Like I think there are sections that are clear enough. I don't know. Every time they're in those freaking tunnels, man, it's like
the tunnels hurt it. But like you look at the race scene in 4, right? Where
Right.
like, but that intercuts with the weird
GPS.
the GPS, which is like, which by the way helps a lot with geography.
There are so
But it's
there
frustrating.
are so many ugly bad computers in these movies that just every time
And every time they kind of gawk at them, like, "Whoa, this technology," and you're like,
"Oh, this is the future."
No, it's like I love that the twist in the scene is held up because of a fax, and it's like,
Yes, literally. Oh, that was great. One thing that is important to me is to recognize how important clarity is, because like I said, like I think in the third and the fourth one to an extent, or to a large extent, I think the driving sequences when they're clear work really, really well, and then the other action sequences, whether it's hand to hand or in the car, when you don't have clear geography set, they just it turns into a muddled mess. So it's like I think some of the like hand to hand combat sequences just don't work for me in the third and the fourth one, and some of the driving sequences were like when they're in tunnels, where it's like I don't have any reference
for where you're at,
and all the cars look the same down there, like because the lighting is bad, and like
that's another interesting thing about Tokyo Drift, right? Like the cars are distinct,
so distinct.
like they're colorful, and like you have your villain driving the black car, and at
Right.
the end it's 2 black cars racing, but one of them is a muscle car with
Right.
white stripes on it. You
Yeah.
can clearly see who
Yeah.
is who.
Yeah, I think that is something that is very worth noting. And it's like, and this is nothing new. This is nothing that I didn't know before, but just like seeing it like that clearly, because like it almost feels like to a certain extent feels like 2 different directors directed the like car sequences versus the hand-to-hand combat sequences occasionally. It's like because like the hand-to-hand stuff is very shaky, very hard to follow, and there's some of that in the car sequences as well. But like you said, like having big, bright, colorful cars of different shapes and sizes like against each other, it's like it's very clear understanding like who's who and where they are. I think is very important, and like I don't know, cinematography is important, and
Of course,
the 3 and 4
I think
just look a lot
5, 6,
prettier.
7 you're gonna like, because the way they film it, the clarity of it, the just top to bottom, like the first one we kind of said look a little cheap. They look
Right.
a little cheap. The
Yeah.
next ones do not look cheap.
Yeah,
They-
like I think cars look best under fluorescent and neon. Like because those sequences in the like parking garage
Look great.
in Tokyo Drift look great. Like and drift and here's the biggest takeaway. Drifting is badass.
drifting's dope, dude.
Drifting fucking rules, and there should be way more of it in these movies. And there was none in the first 2.
There are some cars in 6 that you're gonna enjoy.
I'm very excited. So yeah, I think these sequences kind of look best in like either like suns like golden hour or under fluorescent and neon. I think like they just look hot. They look great.
Yeah.
I
Again,
think those
horny
are-
for cars. One of the 3
horny for cars,
degrees of horny with
horny
these
for
movies.
women and horny for the boys.
So yeah, okay. So we've talked about these movies. You're very clearly excited for what's to come.
Yes.
Which I am ecstatic about, because 5 is like one of my favorite movies, period, I think.
Right.
So
I'm
that's
excited. That I've only heard that's everybody's take on who's seen the Fast Saga. Who have seen the
put
Fast
some respect on it, please. Thank you.
the Fast Saga.
Yeah.
Those who have seen the Fast Saga, everybody, I think it's kind of unanimous that the 5th one is the best one.
And I'm very, very excited to watch that. And that's the next episode will be 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Because I'm making you binge all of these movies.
Yes.
So our friendship can be complete, and we can finally see the key of time or whatever we unlock at the end of this. Anyway,
Head into the B segment.
head into the B segment. Shane, take it away.
I don't have a name for this yet. The B segment.
We're prepared. That's
We're really prepared. This is not our first time.
no, of course not.
That being said, I thought it would be fun if we ended each episode with just a fun game that had something to do with movies. I saw this done on a different podcast. If anybody knows what podcast I am talking about, please call it out. It's not Ma Bim Bam. It's not Work of Fart, but it's kind of similar to Work of Fart on My Brother and Me. I have taken movie titles, and I have taken each word in the movie title and found the antonym for that movie title. So what I'm going to say, so for an example, if I were to say live soft, the answer would be
Die Hard.
right. So your the game is to guess the name of the movie based on the.
Which, by the way, I'm terrible at these kind of games.
So we're gonna have a
very
great
fun.
time. Let's start off easy. Down.
Up.
I think that's a pretty.
Oh, I got it. Oh yeah.
I think that's a pretty easy place to start. The bad, the good, and the beautiful.
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, it's great. All right, this one I think will be interesting. Tiny Mommy.
Shit.
What's the opposite of tiny?
Big.
What's the opposite of mommy?
Big Daddy.
Big Daddy.
Okay. I have not seen Big Daddy.
Forward to the Past.
Back to the Future.
Right? Catwoman Ends.
Batman Begins.
Yeah, there you go. I knew you'd get with that one. This one's okay. I think this one might be the toughest one so far. The Satan Mother.
The Godfather. Yeah.
The Godfather. I found this this list on Sporkle, which is a website, and this quiz is movie titles by Antonym's quiz, and there's stats. So I think this is like the list that you could. It doesn't matter. The Arrived.
The Departed. Sorry, wait. The Departed.
The Departed. You Hate Me, Woman. You Hate Me, Woman.
You love me. I love you, man.
I love you, man.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
cool.
like I'll give you 1 minute to talk about your I love you, man take.
Now?
Yeah. Go
Oh, perfect. Okay, I'm positive I'm gonna bring somebody on and show them I love you, man.
Yes.
I Love You, Man is a rom-com about friendship,
Uh-huh.
and it's amazing. And I watch that movie at least twice a year.
Right.
I love it. Paul Rudd is so good. Jason Segel is so good. It is genuinely funny. Watch I Love You, Man. That's the endorsement here.
I also love that movie. I will never, anytime I think of the band Rush or I think of a bass guitar, all I can think of is Paul Rush going, slapping the bass, man.
It's that line, and then the other one that I have a gif of that I send frequently is I love you, bro, Montana.
Yeah, classic.
So good.
Classic. This is just an appreciation post for Jason Segel. Thank you, Jason Segel,
For all you do, for everything you've done.
and who you are. A Lot of Bad Women.
A Few Good Men.
Yep. Nice Boys.
Bad Girls?
No.
What?
Was the opposite of nice.
Mean Girls. Mean
you go.
Girls. Okay, I was
All
like,
right. This one has the least amount of correct guesses. Let's see if you can get it. And here we go. You're not going to get it. This is tough. Unblemished Butt. Unblemished Butt. What's the opposite of butt?
Such a strange question.
It's very question. What's the opposite of butt?
Unblemished. So
Let's start with that second half. What's the opposite of butt?
yeah, but I can't figure it out. You gotta give me this. I'm fucking lost here. Face?
Yes.
That feels like it's not the opposite.
It is and it isn't.
Sure. Okay. Face.
Okay, what is the opposite of unblemished?
Blemished.
This is true, but what is another word for a blemish? A permanent blemish.
Scarface.
Scarface.
That
one's really
That
bad.
is terrible. I hated that.
And then how about let's do one more.
Hi.
Russian Ugly. Russian like the country.
Yeah. American Beauty.
Yep.
Okay.
Also Kevin Spacey is gross. But
Just,
that's a good one. So yeah, my goal is to come up with different games each time.
I'm very excited.
If there's some favorites, I think we'll rotate some favorites. But that was the B segment.
I love this. And then the final thing, and I'm dropping this on you. I just decided I want to do this.
Okay.
One other than the Fast and Furious movies, which we recommend, I think, outright because we talked about them for an hour.
Yes.
Something else you've been watching recently or listening to
Yeah, I was about to
or
say.
reading or anything like that. Because you and I have been watching House of the Dragon.
Yes. We to put us in time, because I don't know whether or not this is going to come out this week or next week or weeks from now.
Yeah.
We are 3 episodes in?
3 episodes in of House of the Dragon.
Yeah. I didn't care for the first episode that much. I liked the second episode better. I liked the third episode the most. So I'm excited.
So House the Dragon. The other thing I threw on that I just started is Cobra Kai season 5.
Yeah.
Watch that. Cobra Kai rules, man. That's a great show.
I love Karate Kid. I've never set foot in the
that might be an episode at some point. I love Cobra Kai.
I've got 2. I'm not much of a book reader, but I do like audiobooks. I have been listening to the podcast for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm a big sci-fi nerd, and I've never really dived into like kind of classic sci-fi novels. And so I've been listening to the audiobook version of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And damn it, if that book is not hilarious, that is a very, very funny book. I'm not all the way through it yet. I think I'm like 75% of the way through. I'm really enjoying it. I'm excited to finish the book, and then I'm excited to watch the movie because I'm pretty sure, Spencer, you haven't watched the movie either.
I have not.
And depending on my feelings about it, that might be an episode.
That might be an episode.
Depending on my feelings about it. If at all, maybe it could be an episode to have you read the book or listen to the audiobook or something, because I have really enjoyed it so far.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm down.
And the audiobook's really short. It's like 5 hours. It's like super short. In terms of audiobooks. And then the other thing that I have been listening to has been I don't want to mess up the name of the album. Let me look it up real quick. It is Black Midi. It is the post-punk band Black Midi, their newest album, which I believe is called Hellfire. Okay, yeah, I knew it was Hellfire. I just didn't want to get it wrong. It's called Hellfire. It is incredibly weird. It is incredibly experimental. It's not. I'm not into the post-punk scene. This is kind of my first foray into it. I saw a TikTok where somebody was talking about Black Midi and one of the songs on the album, and I got really intrigued, and so I decided to check it out. And holy Moses, it is the most. It is like the most interesting new music I have heard in a very, very, very long time. I think if you don't want to like listen to the whole record up front, I think starting off like just trying it out and seeing if you'd be into it or not. I think listening to either the songs Welcome to Hell or Dangerous Liaisons would be a good primer into whether or not you'd actually enjoy it. That being said, I think the front to back, the entire record is phenomenal. I just think it's a lot more experimental and weird in the first half. And so it's like kind of tough to get started if you're not ready for it. That being said, like I think that album is phenomenal. I have not been this excited about a band, about kind of like a new genre to me in a really, really long time. And so I'm excited to delve more into post-punk as well as to Black Midi's other music. I've gotten some recommendations from my brother who's a really good musician and has a very wide taste in music. So I'm looking forward to getting more into that. So those are probably my 2 recommendations would be Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Black Midi's Hellfire.
Oh yeah. I'll throw just real quick in there. Cobra Kai, like I said, I'm also just finally started Better Call Saul, and I am loving it. Yeah. It is so good. Yeah. And then a kind of a mutual one that we've just been watching together, House of the Dragon, has been getting progressively better every episode. Yep. Check these out. Yep. Check out the Fast and Furious movies. Yep. The whole saga. Yep. All of it, because Shane now has to.
You join me, won't you?
Do it.
We will be discussing 5, 6, and 7. So if you want to listen along or want to
watch those,
watch along,
jump
with
in.
us.
I'm sure that conversation will be much more in depth on each specific movie.
Right.
But yeah, thanks for listening. This podcast is called What Is Us? That's our kind of production company. So What Is Us? This is us.
This is us.
Watch this stuff or don't. Live your life.